I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Margo Wilson. I am the lead teacher at Culinary Arts and Hospitality here at Assabet Valley High School in Marlboro. I've been here for approximately 18 years, and I've seen a lot of things in this school and done a lot of different things, been involved in a lot of different things. I must say that this is a first for me to sit in on a panel like this and be a part of it. I'm excited about it. I'm nervous about it at the same time. It's a field that's not unique, of course, to anything that I do, but I am glad to have been asked to participate and throw some questions out there to help help this to go along. So I'm glad to be here. And so if we could take this time and each one of you will give you maybe 5 or 10 minutes to introduce yourself and to tell us about yourself and give us a little bio. If we'd like to, maybe we can start with Gabby.
Okay, hi, good morning. I'm Gabby Cotman. I was originally born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, where I attended a high-tech academy school, much like the students that are participating today, where we learned about different engineering principles, and we earned dual credits to Virginia Commonwealth University, which is the school that I ended up going to for my bachelor's in biomedical engineering. During my bachelor's, I did research for pulmonary diseases, and I also had a chance to internship with the FDA. And once I graduated, I became a quality engineer at Boston Scientific, where I support endoscopy products. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Alejo?
Okay, thank you, Margo. Well, nice to meet everyone. My name is Alejo Lipschitz. I am a senior scientist at DuPont Electronics and Imaging here in Marlboro. So a little bit about my background. I was born in Uruguay, moved to Argentina, and lived there until I was 18. Then I was very fortunate to receive a scholarship to come study in the US. So that was through a college in Pennsylvania. I studied chemistry and art, and then decided that I really needed a job. So I just continued studying chemistry. And maybe because I wasn't a very good artist, right? Obviously, if anyone's interested in that, they should pursue that. And then I went on to graduate school to get my PhD in chemistry at Northwestern University. Then I did my postdoctoral studies at Caltech, California Institute of Technology. I was there for a couple of years in Pasadena, California. And then time came to actually get that job. So this is my first job. I've been in the private sector for 4 years now. And I do obviously a lot of research, a lot of development for electronics, smartphones, computers, 5G, flexible electronics, all the cool things that you hear about. So very exciting line of work. And I also participate with a larger group of people on diversity initiatives, getting more opportunities for Latino and Black chemists, engineers, and scientists to be able to secure jobs in the private sector. So I'd love to talk about any of that if there's any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Robinson.
Hey, my name is Leonard Robinson. I'm going to go way back to when I first discovered that I liked chocolate ice cream. I went to high school in Michigan at a place called Cranbrook Kingswood, actually on scholarship. Following my time at Cranbrook Kingswood, I went to Columbia University, where I studied electrical engineering, which is the place behind me in my virtual background. After I finished electrical engineering, I moved out to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I worked for GE Healthcare, building circuit boards and analysis tools for MR machines. So if you've ever had a scan or been to the hospital, I worked on the complex electronics that go inside of that. And that was fun. I really enjoyed that, but it was hard. I needed a PhD in order to really like do it for the rest of my life. So I went back to school at the Georgia Institute of Technology, or Georgia Tech, and got a degree in computer engineering. At the same time, I moved out to Massachusetts. I now live in Marlborough, and I found the life sciences. What I currently do now is I help make pharmaceutical products and pharmaceutical supplies as a lead manufacturing engineer. So if you can imagine making one toothbrush, or if you can't, imagine making 100 million toothbrushes every year and then disposing of them properly. Those are the sort of challenges you take on as an engineer, and maybe some of the challenges I took on when I was in high school, such as how can I tie my shoes faster? The actual answer to that one was to not tie them at all and create like these little snip things that I would just pull and then move the snips and they'd be tight all day. It was a random aside. Cool, yeah.
Thank you very much. I have received questions that were given to me last week from students that they have formulated to ask you, each one of you, to talk about a little bit. So I will throw out one question, and if you could all answer it, it would be appreciative. So the first question I have is, were there any particular obstacles you had to face because of the color of your skin, and how did you overcome them? So,
I can answer that.
Thank you.
So I would say I really kind of faced obstacles more so in college. So it wasn't necessarily that I was experiencing like discrimination, but it's that whole thing of like when people look more like you tend to like gravitate towards them. And a lot of the classes that I was in, there was like nobody that looked like me. And you know, a lot of the white students were like all like together and studying together and helping each other. And like a lot of the Asian students were together and helping each other. And I was just, I guess I kind of felt like left out. I almost felt like sort of like an outcast. But like, I ended up just like letting myself open up a little bit. Like just because someone doesn't look like me doesn't mean I can't receive help from them or that they're not willing to help me. So I just had to encourage myself to like reach out despite my differences. And even like reach out to like a lot of my teachers and use them as resources too. I know like as a student, sometimes you're really shy and it's like really intimidating, but I probably wouldn't have gone through high school or college if I never like actually went up to my teacher and said, hey, can you help me out? And so, yeah, a lot of it, I think, was sort of like in my head. I thought that they would treat me a certain way because of what I looked like. And some people do, but like you never know until you try and just like, you know, open yourself up to other people, different types of people.
Right. Well, thank you.
I would say that I definitely agree with everything that Gabby's saying. Spot on. In my experience doing research, which is the core of the work in science, in graduate school, in the private sector after graduate school, it's a collaborative effort, right? So it's really, really important to amplify your work and your impact by collaborating with other people. And so you want to bring people into your work. You want people to bring you into their work, and that's how you become a better scientist, more accomplished. And obviously, people may have an immediate likeness with others, and they will want to work with specific people. Maybe they look like them. Maybe they come from similar cultures, speak the same language. So yeah, at times I also felt like that maybe was a challenge. But what I would say is that, there's always someone there. in science, there's more people that are different than people that are common, right? They might not look exactly like me, or have had the exact same experience, but everyone feels a little different. Everyone feels a little weird. And you know, at the end of the day, my closest friends, the ones that I did the most work with, collaborated the most, were maybe other international students or other people of color, maybe not the same color I am, right? But when you think about it that way, you know, we're not a minority.
I tend to be a little bit more in your face about my ethnicity. So I can think of every single time I've put the words Black/African American on an application. And at this point, it's been hundreds. And there's two sort of obstacles I know that I have faced. One of them is someone who could tell I was Black and understood that I might come from a different background and either did or did not put obstacles to my success in my way. In either case, I was going to drive forward, but there were times when I did need to have a conversation and understanding about my own abilities and capabilities. The second time is a little bit harder to see, and I'll use it in this context. When I did the SAT writing in the year 2008, I think, I actually wrote my SAT writing assignment about LeBron James, which I later discovered would basically call me out to the people who might judge those as having put me of a person of color and descent. And even to this day, I think I was right to write about LeBron James because, you know, 4-4, 5-4 now, I think it's 4-4, right? And a career, especially in a competitive athletics perspective that spans the length of time that he does for his sort of success, was something that I could recognize as extraordinary as a very young person. On the flip side, it may have actually lowered my SAT score, right? Because they were doing studies at the time and saying things like, well, depending on your subject matter, the person may interpret what you think you know based on how you've written it. Now, I knew I was fully capable. I wrote about it in all of my college essays. I've written about it in my own blogs. I understand my own capabilities. But when you present yourself and your ideas, sometimes it's less so the color of your skin and the cultural background that you present, which people may attempt to put obstacles in your way for.
Can you expand a little bit on what you just said, that last part about putting obstacles in your way, and just give people a little bit more broader sense of what you mean by that?
Oh, very much so. So maybe the best way to talk about it is to consider that most of my family's from the South, Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Monroe, and a little bit of New Orleans. And if I was to talk the same way that I talk to everybody, that I talk to my family and friends, those people would think that I might be less intellectually sound. And so might present me with less information as an obstacle, less resources, or even be less interested in what I have to say. And many of those obstacles might not be someone like coming up to you and saying, hey, don't do this. It may just be not being invited to something that you want to do. So one of the things I've always tried to do for myself is just open doors. I go out, I do research, I look things up, and I see what other people have access to that I might want for myself. It's really then when you try to go and get those things that you might actually be presented with a real obstacle, as opposed to sort of a nebulous thing that doesn't exist. Does that help?
I think so. Yes, I believe it does. Yes, give me some insight. Thank you all. And for those of you, I know that the students we can't see them, but that was Leonard Robinson who just answered that last question. My next question that I have for the panel is, as a person of color in STEM, what are the biggest challenges you've faced?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest challenges I face every day are not related to the color of my skin. but the problems that I'm presented with. If we leave those problems to the side, it can actually be interacting with people in a global setting who may have never met a person of color before in their life.
Wow.
Or someone of like Black descent from America. Because since there's, to be honest, relatively few people in corporate America who are people of color compared to every corporation everywhere in the world, it's entirely possible that I might be on a conference call with a technical person from Japan, and I'm the first Black person that they have seen in like 2 decades. Right? Because for them, they worked in Japan, their team was Japanese, everybody spoke Japanese, and then one day they get promoted to international manager of, we'll just say, technology, and then they have this massive global technical team, and then they're looking at people on the call, and they're like, whoa, everyone's got a different accent, everyone's speaking a different language, but now that different language for me, because I'm Japanese, is English, and there's people of all different colors who I've read about in books or seen on TV. So like at a certain point you're like, wow, so this person may never meet face to face a person of color, and we still have to do business together.
And then once they have met you, do you think that once they've met you and really got a feel for you and talk to you, do you think that has changed their perception, or is it you still feel a little on the awkward side?
Oh, I've never felt awkward about it, but I just can't promise everyone will just like me. It'd be nice if they did, but at a certain point, like, you just might meet people for 10 minutes and just have to work together, and you're an adult, so that's just what you do.
Right. Again, would anyone else like to answer that question, please? Gabby? Or?
I would like to answer. So I would say that like my biggest obstacle that I've dealt with, so like this year, like just dealing with like Black Lives Matter and like the workplace, like really trying to, recognize like that it's happening. It was like really, really difficult, I think, for me because, and like a lot of Black employees at Boston Scientific, because it's like we're all kind of like going through something that's like a little bit emotional, but like now like everybody is like bombarding us with questions and like asking us like, so what is Black Lives Matter about? Like, how do you, and it's like weird because it's almost like they're asking you to explain like why you matter. Like, it was like, that to me was just like a weird because at that point, I don't know if like someone asking me if I'm okay is genuine or if it's just they're checking a box, because that's like the right thing to do. And so I would say like that was a pretty big obstacle, and also just like feeling secure in myself because I am like the only Black woman in my department or my division, and I'm also like, well, I was also like the lowest tier engineer there. So it kind of like, you hear all these things like women get paid less and like Black women get paid even less. And like you look around and you don't see any like Black women in like a manager position or like a senior director position. So that can be like really discouraging to you. Like, okay, like, am I working at a company that's actually encouraging people of color to be in like higher positions and like be promoted and advance their career and everything. And with that, like, I just really had to start saying, I have to look out for myself. Like, I can't depend on someone saying Gabby should be promoted. I have to learn how to speak up for myself and advocate for myself and apply for those positions that I want. If I want to like see that change, I have to believe in myself as a Black woman. So, yeah.
Does your company promote Black strength within the workplace of helping to make it a better place to work for everyone, especially Blacks? Is there anything that you can speak on that is helping to bring that gap together?
Yeah, so there's an organization called Bridge. It's an ERG, so they're like employee ran groups. And it's a group for like African Americans where, well, not only where you can just like talk and talk about what it's like always being like the only Black person in the conference room, but like we also like really talk about like our resumes and like how we're gonna like build our careers and everything, and like kind of just like uplifting each other. And you know, you don't have to be Black to be a part of the organization. It's just, you know, you just have to be for like Black people like advancing their careers. And so I'm a part of that. And also we have our diversity and inclusion group that is really like pushing really hard to hire more Black employees. So
Fantastic. So I hear a lot of networking. So that's important.
yeah.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Leo, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, absolutely. So I definitely agree with what Leonard and Gabby are saying. I would say that on a personal and an environment level, I faced some of those things. You know, in science, you know, you're trying to work on really difficult questions. You know, you're surrounded. You know, I'm surrounded by a lot of smart people, and you know, it's you doubt yourself a lot of times, right? And it's really hard. Makes it even harder when you walk into a new place and you feel like maybe some people, you know, assume that you're there for the wrong reasons. Maybe you didn't earn your place there. Maybe it's just some sort of way of whitewashing, you know, societal issues, and you know, you were just given the opportunity to be there without earning it. And of course, that's not true, but it makes it hard sometimes. I would say that looking back, the places where I felt that the most were the places that had the most problems. You know, you know, there were a lot of problems among people. There was a lot of distrust, a lot of anger, and you know, these nasty things come out, right? So it was definitely about finding the right places, because there's lots of good places where that's not the case.
Yeah.
On a systemic perspective, we put together a program to hire more Black and Latino PhDs last year. It was a grassroots initiative that we started at DuPont, sort of kind of like what Gabby is talking about. I'm sure a lot of companies have similar things. And we were able to hire the first PhD last year. So we're really happy about that. And of course, there were, you know, naysayers, right? With the exact same arguments that I just mentioned, right? Do these people deserve to be here? Did we cut corners so that they would qualify? And of course we didn't, right? We absolutely did not. But you know, the fact that we have to argue for that, and you know, explain that that's not the case, whereas we definitely do not have to do that for other people, right? So that's definitely frustrating. But you know, at the end of the day, at least in the situation where we're in this company, and I think many other companies, is that, you know, those voices are definitely the minority, right? And they're becoming harder and harder to support, you know, those points of view. And even though I did hear people saying things like that, the vast majority, you know, totally drown out that noise, and we got full support to continue doing what we do. So, you know, a lot of it is just like what I said at the beginning. You know, don't doubt yourself. Don't let yourself be discouraged. Take every opportunity you have. Help other people once you're in the position to help them. And, you know, just continue moving forward and block out that noise.
Yeah,
It's hard.
That's a really good point, valid point. But it sounds like in some ways though it's hard though to have people have that image of you or make you feel as if you didn't earn it or deserve it as much as the next person. I mean, that just has to be something that makes it very difficult on a daily basis to make that kind of go away and show that there's no truth to that you work just as hard as the next person to get there. But I'm sure that keeps a lot of people down and back too, because they always constantly have that over their head. So I know that could be I could see that as being a large challenge. So, thank you. Is it important for students of color to have a mentor, and why?
I actually like to talk about this one. And before I do, I just want to say to Gabby, so many people since like the month of April, May have been asking me like, how are you doing? But I was trying to figure out if something was going on like more broadly. And then finally someone came out and said, but Black Lives Matter. And I was like, oh, that happened back in 2016. Here's a video from that time. And she was like, no, that had to come out this year. But nope, that was 4 years ago. So I just wanted to say, yeah, you're right for that one. When it comes to the idea of mentorship, in some ways, that's what this is what are the things that you should, can, or will do in order to be successful? So if you're on this call, you probably already think that mentorship is important. Is it more important long-term? The answer to that is also yes, because it's very difficult to be successful by yourself. Even if you don't give the people credit and acknowledgement, there are thousands of people who support currently our way of life, and then there will be hundreds of people who are responsible for your everyday success, whether those are your customers, your suppliers, the people who you buy stuff from, or even folks like your teachers, principals, and administrators. And then there's the people within your very select network who will advocate for you and try to guide you. Those are folks like your coaches, again, your teachers, sometimes your parents, sometimes like just your cousins or even your peer group. And then there's you. And it's very hard to mentor yourself because getting out of your own way, and I can speak to this personally, it's very difficult.
I can add to that a little bit, which
I see on the panel discussion.
So, are we having technical difficulties?
So Margo, if you'd like me to add a little bit.
Sorry, we had a pause there. I wasn't sure what happened. I think it froze.
Got it. Yeah, so I definitely agree with what Leonard is saying. I just like to add that all successful people have lots of mentors, you gotta work on improving yourself as much as improving your network. When I think about the critical steps in my career, a lot of it boils down to one conversation that I had with one person, right, that maybe was in a position to connect me with an opportunity, right? And you gotta maximize those type of interactions. You gotta ask for help for all the people that are willing to help out, and there's tons of them, right? Obviously, it could be a little bit harder for people of color, to build a network of mentors, just because there's that likeness, right? That I guess maybe you gotta get through. That is easy for other people to connect with mentors, but there's people out there, right? And the people sitting around you right now, they are your network too, right?
Yeah.
And
are there organizations that you can connect with that will lead you down the right path?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I work in electronics. So there's a number of professional organizations in the area for people in the industry that are always looking to connect with students. So one that I work with directly is New England IMAPS. So it's IMAPS, like a map. And what we do a couple times a year is, bring in students, expose them to the work that we do in electronics, provide them opportunities to present if they want to present about something. It could be something simple, right? Like a review of some articles that they've read online, whatever they can. But those are important professional experiences because they definitely help you to get to college. They definitely help you to get to grad school if that's what you want to do afterwards. So yeah, if anyone's interested, absolutely, let's connect afterwards. And on top of that, I've worked a lot with the American Chemical Society, and there's opportunities for younger students there to connect as well. And yeah, I mean, you gotta understand that, you know, for older people, it's also important for their own career to be helping students, right? So there's always, you know, there's an interest in both ways, right? A lot of people will consider themselves successful if they're able to help other people, right? So you can make them successful by letting them help you and connecting with them. So it's not a big chore that you got to figure out all on your own, right? There's going to be plenty of people waiting on the other side to do it together. So, yeah.
There's somebody out there always giving back. Thank you. My next question for the panel is, are there any scholarship opportunities for people of color in engineering for college?
So I can answer this one. National Society of Black Engineers has a number of scholarships that are offered by various corporations, so it does depend on economic times. I personally received 2 scholarships. One of them was the Google Fuse Scholarship, back when I liked computers a lot more. That scholarship was for students of color interested in computing. I don't know if Google still offers it, but there's probably a comparable one. The second one was known as the Lloyd Trotter Scholarship, which was with GE, and now my part is Cytiva, which I won through the National Society of Black Engineers. So a lot of the pre-professional organizations like NSBE, SHPE, and SWE, not necessarily in that order, have scholarship opportunities that are available, like when you sign up as a pre-collegiate or collegiate member. So you can just go on the website and be like, scholarships, I need money, and then sort of see what's out there.
Okay, thank you. Gabby or Alejo?
I agree with him. I was just gonna say what he said, because if you're a member of NSBE, like you will see, like when you go on their website, like it's just a long list of like scholarships, and not just scholarships. They also have a long list of like internship opportunities too. So yeah.
Thank
And
you.
what I'll add is that obviously NSBE is one of the best organizations to connect with. In addition to that one, NovaShe is one that we work with a lot. So this is a national organization for Black chemists and chemical engineers, NovaShe. And just like Abby said, a great place for connecting with some opportunities at the same time as, you know, meeting people in the industry for internships and doing key steps in your career that are definitely important for school, for graduate school, and for finding a job.
Thank you. The next question I have for the panel: what are the most critical changes that we must make to face the future effectively?
I guess I'll speak to that. So it just like goes back to like being open, right? I'm like some of the changes that I had to make, like I'm very introverted, and I had to realize that in order to really become a part of like my workplace environment and become effective, like I had to really work on like showing myself friendly. And that doesn't even just go with my work environment. That's like in college too, just throughout life. It's just a good thing to do, because you never know what you know that somebody else does know. And that's also a good way for you to like get mentors, just going back to that question. You know, and a mentor isn't just somebody that like is assigned to you or someone that you call a mentor. It could be a teacher, it could be a professor, it could be a study buddy, it could be like anything. And so, yeah, I would say just being more open, and then allowing yourself to be challenged. Because I know in college, I was like, you know, if I was meant to do this, wouldn't I be good at it? Wouldn't this like come easy to me? But that's not necessarily true. I really, really love biomedical engineering, but like it was a pain in my butt like several times. And there were times where it wasn't very easy for me, but I had to realize that, you know, you grow more and you learn more when you're facing adversity, and it's something that's really, really difficult. Like if you're always doing something easy, or it feels like it's a piece of cake or it's a breeze, then like, are you growing? Are you gaining any actual skills from that? So yeah, I would say just being more open and like showing myself friendly, and welcoming challenge and welcoming change.
Okay. Thank you.
So I keep agreeing. I definitely agree with Gabby and what she's saying. I maybe I have two quick pieces of advice. One that I apply at a personal level to myself. There's a lot of things I can control. And there's a lot of things in my environment that, as a single person, I can't change, right? But I try to lean in on the one thing that I do control, which is how much effort I put into things, right? That is always up to you, to always keep growing, keep studying, keep learning new things, keep adding to your persona as a professional scientist, an engineer, or whatever your goal is. So, lean on that. And then the second thing is, build that network. Definitely build that network. Be the person that people gravitate towards, whatever aspect of your personality that is, lean on that, so that, as you keep moving forward, you have more people that you're helping, more people that are helping you. Doesn't matter who they are. It could be your classmate, turns out to be an incredibly successful person, right? And you want to be part of that success that spreads. So, whatever mindset you need to be in with your own personality to achieve that, just lean on that and things will go well.
I guess what I would say to this one is teamwork. If I was to draw a corollary, I think of the number of hip hop songs that mention teamwork in passing is quite large. And I think one of the things that it's easy to do is to forget that networking isn't just about you. It's also about building the squad or a team of people who accenture weaknesses, but who you rise up with your strengths. And I currently have my squad. I know every single one of them. I think about them at least once a day, usually while I'm running. And we do things together. And they might not always be in the same physical place, but we'll take on tough ideas or challenges together. Whether it's like running and being healthy, or if it's actual technical or business challenges. Prior to sort of graduating from college, the closest I got to that was maybe a study group, and it was always with my sports team. But once you graduate, from high school or college, it can be easy to forget about all those wonderful people who helped you get through, the tough midterm season, or helped you with the problem set or homework or even paper, or the people you talked with, and to just sort of, I guess, only talk about, we'll just say, love and hip hop, just throw out a random show that I've watched. So when it comes to things that you really want to do personally and professionally, right, you go from talking about how well you want to do in a class to maybe not talking about where you want to be in the future, what you want to do for your career. So we talked about mentorship before, and one of the biggest challenges I think to overcome is once you become an adult, knowing what you want and being able to tell your friends about it, even if it's embarrassing.
Thank you. My next question that I have is, what effect has the STEM fields made in the business community?
Wow. So I'd love to talk about this one. Unbeknownst to many, many people, STEM runs the world. If you're a bit of a history buff, you'll go back to, we'll say, the printing press. That was what turned it around from a STEM perspective, as opposed to just a liberal arts activity. When technology becomes the infrastructure and foundation of decisions that people make every day, STEM does run the business world. A lot of what you'll see in business is either recasting or renewal of various ideas that have been created in STEM. And here's an example. A lot of people drive cars. A lot of people ride the subways. A lot of people live in buildings. Before really the onset of STEM in the 17, 18, and 1900s, through what's known as the Second Renaissance, people lived in buildings that were one story unless it was a castle, like everyone. And maybe you were lucky and you lived in an inn, and that inn stood for, 80 odd years. Now, like a lot of people, for instance, live in two-story buildings, and the buildings themselves can be as big as 100 stories. Those things are done with like civil engineering and people whose job it is to make sure that those buildings don't collapse. Mm-hmm. That's just one really big example that you can see. But it's hard now, at least for me, to imagine, knowing the roots, what life would be like without STEM again, unless I was watching like, I don't know, one of those movies where just like everything's gone and people are like, I don't know, living a different lifestyle than we currently do.
Okay. Thank you.
Wow, so that's an amazing answer. I'll just add that, if you think you have a lot of business skills or a lot of interest in business, that's a great position to be in if you're also in STEM, right? A lot of what scientists and engineers do is, sell their ideas, right? Get people behind their work. And it's a lot about the money too, obviously, right? If you're a professor, you're selling your work to get funding. If you're in industry, you're thinking about convincing your customers, thinking about how you can be better than the competition. So the business acumen, if you have the personality, or the social aspect of it that you enjoy, that will definitely help make you a successful person in STEM. So I think the two of them go together.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think just to like add to that, like, kind of like reiterating everything that they just said, there are like a lot of programs now too where you can get like a dual degree in like business and engineering, because I think like a lot of colleges are starting to see the importance of understanding business acumen along with those engineering principles, because you might have a product, but like you don't know exactly how to run a business and like really like market that product. And a lot of times those are like two different skills, two different types of personalities, yeah, like if you ever have the chance to like take advantage of that, do it.
Do it.
I think a really good like take-home homework example is think about the number of houses you saw maybe 5 years ago that had solar panels on them, right? The answer is probably 0 in the city of Marlborough. And if you zoom forward to right now, probably 1 in every 5 houses I've seen now is either has solar panels or is installing them. And it's places like that where in the background, people are like creating more efficient solar panels, making solar roofs, and improving the houses. But at the front, they're just selling solar panels from a business perspective, like hand over fist.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions that has been asked is, how do you have to be great at math to be an engineer?
I'll answer that. Well, I guess I would say it's a little hard for me to answer because I'm pretty good at math, but let me just tell you, like the higher level math, like differential equations, linear equations, stuff like that, I was not very good at it. I'm just gonna be honest, I was not very good at it. Like I pushed through it, but honestly, I don't, and that's not to say that math is not important. Math is very important, but like honestly, at this time in my career, like I don't really, as a quality engineer, like use those things like every single day. Like maybe if I were like an R&D engineer or a product development engineer, I would. But I guess that just goes to say it depends on like what you want to be doing with your career, like, you know, what role you want to play in the product's life cycle. Depending on that, you will need to know math. But if you're doing a position like me, it's just like not something that's in the forefront. And even so, like there are so many skills that you end up really just learning on the job. So even if you aren't that great at those things and you do still want to do process and like, you know, development and actually do those designs and stuff, like there are so many like classes you can take where you could just like get a certificate or something and try and learn it over again, like while you're on that job, you know, like your job will always support you, like gaining new skills and like getting better. So you don't have to be scared, like, oh, I'm not that great at this, maybe I shouldn't apply for this job. Like, no, still apply. And they understand that like you're just getting out of college and you're entry level. So they will like help you gain those skills a lot of times. So in all, you just shouldn't be insecure just because you're bad at one subject.
So it sounds like you're encouraging, of course, professional development within the job site itself to help you in that area. That's good.
I would agree with that. You know, I currently my job, I count with my fingers. You know, and if it's a number above 10, I just call it a big number. You know, it is important. It is important. There's so many aspects of STEM that you know you might not end up using it at all, right? A lot of it is just creative work where you're just doing research, you know, testing crazy ideas that maybe are not related to math. So there's definitely a path for you if you definitely don't want to do any of it. But it is important, right? So you know, however you can get through it. It may just be something to check off a list. And you know, you get to use it as much as you want to afterwards.
Okay.
I would I like to accomplish this one with a metaphor. Asking that question is like asking, do you have to be fast, you know, a fast runner in order to join the track team? No, but it helps. Helps a lot. I'll put it to you this way. I am good at math. I've come to terms with it. You know, I've really come to grips with it. And the way I know that I'm good at math is that I count on my fingers in binary. So that I can count like way higher than like normal people, but like looks like I'm just wiggling my fingers. Because if you can count to 10 on your fingers, right, you can count to about 1,027 on your fingers in binary. And you can also do addition, which looks weird when people watch. So I've always been like better at math than a lot of other people, admittedly. And when I got to college, there were people who were better at math than I was. And some of these kids like, you know, went to MIT, now work in their media lab and make like all sorts of cool stuff with mathematical fundamentals. Good for them. I just had to be good enough at math to do what my engineering discipline required. So depending on what kind of engineering you go in, the math requirements are different. Just like depending on what kind of race you're running, or maybe you're even throwing or doing the javelin, you know, doing field activities, right, determines how fast you need to be in order to be successful. I have a friend who won Conference USA and the Ivy League at the hammer, and he's not fast. I'm faster than he is. But he was still able to achieve something in his own discipline. And in engineering, there are places for people who are fantastic at math, and there are places for people who are willing to do math. You just got to be willing to join the team.
You gotta find your place, huh? What type of jobs are, a few examples of what type of jobs are there in STEM?
Well, so I can tell you a little bit from my personal experience at DuPont here in Marlboro. I myself, I'm a scientist, and so my work is kind of at the creative level, right? Something doesn't exist, you get to create it from scratch, pull new ideas from different fields and bring it in. So a lot of it's kind of like a bit of an art. It's really cool. It's almost like like doing a painting or writing a song. And from time to time you have that creative spark, and you come up with something cool. When we package that idea, and if we do it well, then we get to pass it on to engineers, right? And in my case, they're chemical or electrical engineers, and they're really good at taking a concept that admittedly is probably quite blurry by the time we pass it over, and they really are able to build the machinery, the industrial setups, scale it up, do it at a massive scale, do it reproducibly and repeatably thousands of times. Truly the thing that really matters and changes the world, and that's what gets them excited. So if you like the craft of building new devices, or working with massive amounts of matter, that's truly exciting too. And what I would say is that in addition to these more like technical roles, there's also more like business and marketing roles that a lot of scientists end up doing in STEM. So, for example, you may do research for a little while and then realize that you really like the interaction with people, or you're really into the business or selling, whatever was created. So a lot of people find a lot of success in that. And from the marketing side, a lot of people find that, they like to really be at the idea level, and, identify new trends in the market, and, think about what cutting edge ideas are floating in the background, and then bring them back to the company and say, like, hey, you guys should be working on this. This is actually what's going to be happening in the next 5 years.
Oh, great.
So these are all different roles that people find as they go through a career. You don't have to know in advance, right? Maybe you spend a couple of years doing this, a couple of years doing that, and then finally you find that spark and you said, this is what I'm going to do for the next few years. So those are a few of the roles that I can think of in my company.
Thank you.
I would say there are so many different opportunities that I didn't even know of. I'm sitting here, I'm a quality engineer, and when I was in college, I didn't know anything about quality. I didn't even know they existed, honestly. I'm just sitting here, I just want to do R&D. That's what everybody in college says, because that's all they know about. And so, and it's just interesting. You have quality, you have, you could even do regulatory, which has a lot to do with, if you have products that are sold in other countries, you have to have knowledge of different regulations, compared to America and in the EU, things like that. You also have packaging, that you can do. I think packaging is really interesting. And you have biocompatibility if you're just more into that laboratory setting, and having to do with materials and how it interacts with the human body. You also have the complaint investigation site. So that would also be considered a quality engineer, but you're actually receiving devices that we've received complaints on, and trying to figure out how they failed, and do investigations on the product and their failure modes and everything. So those are things that I had no knowledge of before I even came to Boston Scientific. And I'm glad I do now, because it's I was originally kind of putting myself in a box as an engineer, where it's just an engineer isn't just a person that designs things. You have to have knowledge of so many other things. So.
Great.
I'll follow up quickly on that one. I would say one of the things that happens when you get a degree in engineering or a degree with a scientific background is you want that title to say engineer. It doesn't have to, but you kind of want it to, because it's cool. So I have engineering friends who have engineer in the title, and then I have engineering friends who do the other 98% of jobs in the world. And so they're capable of both doing that hard, focused engineering work, taking ideas from scientists who've done research, people who imagine that it's possible to build, we'll say a flying car, right? And then they'll be able to take that one idea and then rebuild that car 100,000 times in a year, right? So they'll take really small ideas and then grow them to be foundational for the world. So that's engineering in my mind. Then there's what engineers are capable of doing, which in my experience is possibly every other job in the world, with the exception of art, both fine performing and visual. That's where it gets a little bit wonky, because I actually, prior to wanting to be, an electronics engineer, essentially, I actually wanted to be a sound engineer. And sound engineer are those people in the booths you see just like with the headphones on, meaninglessly, going up and down on knobs. And then I looked at like the life of a sound engineer, and it's incredibly difficult. Those dudes are like in music studios for like 18 hours a day, listening to song after song after song, right? Adding hooks, beats, like properly adjusting tones. So those guys are engineers too, and sometimes gals, and sometimes they. Right? Those folks do the same work, but it just, imagining doing that for like 18 hours a day was not attractive. But they still are engineers who contribute a lot to the quality of music we receive right now. Right? Because like there used to be a time when you could hear music that wasn't well sampled, and those times are pretty much gone. Like every song that you've probably heard for your whole life is possibly one of the best mixed songs to ever been created in history. So like when I think about what can an engineer do, I think just very separately, things with engineer in the title, and then everything else that needs to be done in the world that an engineer is capable of doing. Fighter pilots, Navy admirals, a lot of those folks are engineers. Politicians, not too many of them, but enough. Engineering is fun. Uber drivers, to be honest, chefs, people who write their own books. Again, when it comes to like people who draw, there's people who like draw engineering drawings, and then there's people who are artistic. And I would say being an engineer does not qualify you to be artistic. That's its own process. So that was the only thing I could really think of when the question was asked, that explicitly the engineer doesn't just qualify you to do with your math, science, and comprehensive reading backgrounds. Maybe like being a historian would be different. But those are the only ones that come to mind immediately, like archaeologist.
Okay. Well, thank you for great answers. I appreciate it. How has STEM changed, since we're talking about a lot of things that are going on now and the different types of engineering there is? How has STEM changed in the past 5 years, and what do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would love to talk about this one, and my answer to this typically refers to Moore's Law, which is the doubling of what's known as passive computing power every year and a half or so. That was a big technical comment, but suffice it to say, the computers now and the way that we handle data and information is about 3 times as fast and comprehensive as it was, 5 years ago. And what does that actually mean? It means that, we'll say 5 years ago, which was, right around the time when I finished my master's degree, the number of integrated sensors in the world that were used was probably on the order of maybe 1 million in sort of your own personal life. We're talking cameras, Bluetooth, we'll say water pots or something weird, right? The number that there's expected to be in another 5 years is on the order of 1 to 2 billion. So between, when you were 9 and when you'll be, we'll say 21-ish, there are going to be more integrated devices in the world than people in the United States. So there'll be 3 integrated devices for everybody. What that really looks like, your smartwatch, your smartphone, which will both be affordable for pretty much everybody if you want one. And then maybe like your smart shoes or your smart clothes. Right, that's the sort of game-changing difference that we're looking at with technologies like 5G, where not only can your phone do everything it can do right now, but it's also, I don't know, attached to you. You just put it out there. And you've got your wrist phone too. And then you've got your like clothes phone, right? And your clothes just play music because you just want that, maybe. Kind of weird. Maybe I'll go make that. That'd be cool. Sorry. If you've seen like the sweaters that light up, I now want like my clothes to like resonate music. All right, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna let somebody else talk. Let me write this down.
What I would add to that, maybe more from a personal level, thinking about the work that you do as an individual in STEM. I think that in the last 10 years that I've been part of it, in grad school and then private sector, we've gone through a couple different revolutions, right? So when I was starting to work on my PhD, the whole biotech revolution happened. But a revolution in the sense of business perspective, right? Lots of companies were created, lots of opportunities for people to come in and grow very quickly because it's a new field, and those big positions don't yet exist. Mm-hmm. And that was, that happened, throughout the 2010s. I think we're going through another revolution right now through, a lot of integration of technologies, such as, what Leonard is mentioning, and then bring it into all sorts of technical fields, right? And I think it's important for young people to be thinking about those trends, right? Because right now you have a lot more power to tilt and give a technical twist to your career than maybe I have. Right, I'm a little bit more set in. Obviously, I keep studying and I keep trying to adapt, but you have a lot more freedom, right? So you want to probably be part of that as much as you can, right? So let me give you an example. I review a lot of resumes for hiring every year, and I'm starting to see more and more just chemists, physicists, people that are experimentalists, but they bring a lot of coding experience to it, right? They put that on their resume. That helps them differentiate it. It amplifies their work. They can bring those tools into just fundamental research. So I think we're gonna start seeing more and more of that. So it's important for people to keep that in mind as they study.
Great.
I actually had one more, and politics aside, the core sort of 4 disciplines that guide the standard of living for everybody in the world are transportation, communication, energy, and food security. We'll say computing supports those. And the school I went to has this concept called engineering for humanity. So like between, those 4 to 8 disciplines, those are the areas that humanity will make notable advances in that will be measurable and impactful. So again, your politics aside, if you look at something like the politicians' quote, Green New Deal, where they're talking about basically redeveloping the entire energy infrastructure for the United States, that has wide-reaching ramifications and consequences if people are interested in doing that. And if you don't do that, right, advances in oil, coal and natural gas efficiencies will also make some of the high power applications that you may have never seen even more interesting. So you think about like really cool sci-fi only talked about inventions like the Large Hadron Collider, right? But then you can imagine, instead of taking up this massive industry edifice in CERN, right, compartmentalizing that. So miniaturization is the other one, and energy efficiency, that'll do it as well. So like things just getting smaller, but also putting more stuff in things and they're the same size. We'll talk about cars. I love talking about engineering. You should stop me if you don't want to talk about this stuff. But if you can imagine the like size of onboard computers in cars as it was 5 years ago versus as it is now, right? If you love Tesla, great, we'll just use that as an example. The onboard computer and OS for Tesla right now is, I believe, the largest single piece of coding operating system in the world. It used to be, I think, Toyota, because Toyota's car system was more complicated than like Windows or the Mac OS, all that stuff. But I think Tesla surpassed them, which is part of the reason that they've got such a competitive advantage. Is because they were able to code, whereas Toyota was like 300 million lines of code. I think Tesla's OS is like 2 billion lines of code on board. And then they've got this other like code cloud thing, which is like another billion lines of code that just sits on their Skylink satellite platform so that they don't have to run as much code on the car and they can just stream it to people, right? That's some of the ground shaking but somewhat quiet technology that exists to support the lives of cool people everywhere.
Wow.
All right, I'm good.
Thank you. So I guess everybody has answered that question. My next question to the panel would be, which you've kind of already just started to talk about, what's happening in like the next 5 to 10 years. And then another question that someone had asked is, what is the most interesting trend as it relates to STEM in 2020?
What am I excited for?
Oh.
Sorry.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm gonna say, okay, it's not like super exciting, but like a funny trend to me. So we all know, since we're doing this virtually, that COVID-19 is a thing that has happened and has really affected our economy and has affected our way of life. And it's fun. Like, the thing that's funny to me is, like, I work in infection prevention, which in general, like, I help support products that are meant to clean scopes that are used for endoscopy. And so that the next patient won't be infected. And so, like, now it kind of feels like the whole company is like looking towards infection prevention to start selling these kits that come with like masks and that come with like these like N95 masks, and like, do we want to have like COVID tests in this kit and like stuff like that. So it's just like and I just think it's ironic because like these are all like really, really simple things, really, really simple things that we're using to try and solve like this really big problem. And so like I thought that was an interesting like, now we're like trying to make sure like all of our gowns are up to a certain standard of protection. I mean, like, it was like to the point where, because at one point a lot of workers that were like physicians or nurses, they were like wearing trash bags because they didn't have enough gowns for everyone that was working, and we had to like expedite our gown. But it's just like, in my head, I've never thought that my products that I support were that important, right? Like, until this huge thing happened, so I just thought that was an interesting trend that happened this year, I know, with my company. And that just goes to show you, like, it could just be like the simplest things, the simplest inventions or like products that could, really, that people really, really need.
So are those products being sold to the public as just kits, or are they being sold to professional hospitals, labs?
Yeah, so we provide them for hospitals. We provide them pretty much for hospitals and for different procedures. But like, now it's like we're kind of like broadening it now, because I support endoscopy, but like, everybody in a hospital needs a gown, right? So so we supply them to hospitals. And yeah.
Wow.
I guess my next level breakthrough would be that Instant Pot that's also a deep fryer, right? Because you already got the air fryer, you got pressure cooker, yogurt maker. I just need a deep frying Instant Pot, and my kitchen will be complete with one device. That's all I need.
What does that device look like?
It looks exactly the same as the Instant Pot does right now. You pop off the top. Right now, it's sort of heat limited, so you don't just like destroy your Instant Pot and like melt it. But like, if they can come up with an Instant Pot that is a deep fryer, so I can like make delicious French fries, I want to be clear, that would change my life. Just next level, change everything about my situation. I like to cook, so right now I use my Instant Pot for stuff like, jambalaya and crawfish etouffee, red beans and rice, black eyed pea soup. But if I could also deep fry as opposed to just air fry in that same Instant Pot, it's over. It's just over. Like, my kitchen's done. I sell the oven. I sell like my burners, right? It's just that Instant Pot and then counter space. And that's where we're
So
at.
you would design and create one for the culinary industry, the food and hospitality industry that's a more gigantic, enormous size while you're creating this, right?
Oh my goodness. That is a wonderful business idea. This was just for me. So, but like, yeah, if it works, I could sell it.
There you go. Okay. Alejo, did you answer that or?
Yeah, I agree. I'm pumped about the Instapot. Right. I'm down. I'll be the first one to buy it when you make it.
First one. Okay. Let's see. We've answered quite a few. I think a lot of the questions start to kind of like repeat themselves in the same manner. I think we have answered most of them, unless at this time, if you folks have anything that you would like to add at this time that you find that would be interesting for the students to know, this would be a great opportunity, if you don't mind, to do that.
Probably the one I would just talk about is non-traditional pathways to personal success. Because I think some people here are from like technical and trade schools, as well as people looking for the more classical, high school, college job. Oh, they opened the Q&A. Cool. And so one of my like proudest moments was I had a guy who worked on one of my teams, and he like was a gymnastics instructor, but he went back to school at UMass Lowell and got a degree in chemistry at the age of like 25. And so he finished his degree, right? Came work for us for a year and a half. I personally trained him, like proudest moments. And then one day he comes to me and he's like, "Hey, sorry, I have to leave." And I was like, "Oh no, is your family okay?" He was like, "No, the family's fine." I was like, "What happened?" He was like, "Well, I just became an associate scientist at this pharmaceutical company." And I was like able to basically track it from like him going to high school, doing some stuff after high school, going back to school, being a gymnastics instructor, getting trained up briefly in the workforce, and then going and being, a scientist for a pharmaceutical company at, I think he was around 32, 33, right? Some people are going to want to be at that point at the age of 23, but it's never too late to retrain and dive into that engineering focus and that engineering discipline. So for me, that's one thing that can be kind of difficult to talk about, is if you don't have sort of a as defined traditional pathway to your own personal success. getting there can look a lot less, I would say, exciting than people who just like get their PhD in 3 years and they're done. And now they're doing this awesome, cool stuff. That doesn't have to be everybody. And no one will look down on you if you do it a different way. That's right for you.
Thank you. Do we have any students that have any questions for the panel?
I just wanted to like really quick piggyback on sort of what Leonard was saying. So like I said, like before, like I was really, really shy and I didn't really like speak up a lot. But like if I didn't start to really speak up more, like I would not have had any of the opportunities that I got to have, you know. And so there were times where like I didn't want to apply for certain things because like I didn't feel good enough, but I applied for a research program that I was in. And when I got into it in college, like I actually ended up getting really, really close with my PI, and she actually acted as a mentor for me. And she recommended me to be a part of like a lunch that was for like the board of directors. And one of the directors worked at the FDA. Then I got an internship through that. So it's just like really just like making those connections and like recognizing that my path is my path and I don't have to do it exactly how like my best friend is doing it or how like my other like fellow students are doing it. Because when I got to my senior year of college, because I was like looking at what everybody else is doing, I started to like become really, really discouraged because everybody else, like they knew what they were gonna do once they graduated, like in November, like before like we even had Christmas break. And I was not that person. And like I really had to sit and say, you know, my journey is like not their journey, you know what I'm saying? And I mean, eventually I did end up getting the job at like Boston Scientific and I felt okay, but it's just kind of like, well, why wouldn't it have been okay for me to like not have a job for like, I don't know, maybe a few months or a year, you know, and just like really think about what it is that I want and what it is that I want to do. Like, why was that idea so bad to me, you know? And it's because it just didn't look like everybody else's path. And so you never know what could happen. Like you could come up with an idea and like start a business in that year, or like, you know, you could do like anything. And it's just like, you need to stop thinking of your life as a formula. Like, okay, like I graduated high school, now I go to college, now I do this, now I do this. Like you need to be open to, like Leonard said, like going the non-traditional path, because you never know what could happen. So.
Thank you.
And I'll add two quick things. The first one is that, you know, hopefully the message we convey is that there's also different ways of approaching STEM. One that really excites me is the creativity. You know, to me, STEM is not all about memorizing formulas. You know, there's a very big aspect of it that's about creation, about coming up with something completely new and getting people excited about it. So that aspect, I don't know if it's emphasized enough when you first start studying it, but it's definitely the thing that keeps me plugged into it and excites me every day. The second thing, more from the realist point of view, I think STEM is one of the biggest opportunities out there for social mobility and for people, you know, from someone just talking about myself, I grew up very poor. I grew up always thinking that, you know, my circumstances were unchangeable and, you know, just have to navigate that. But, you know, through the connections I made through STEM and that many other people made through STEM, you know, there's a path that through a lot of effort leads to, you know, opportunities that are not out there, you know, for most people, to be honest, right? So from the realist perspective too, there's something special about STEM that, you know, that it, you know, if it's what you want to pursue, you know, that's definitely a plus.
I guess one other thing that I would say, and this one can be a more difficult conversation to have, but there are things I think other people should think about. When I say non-traditional pathways, one privilege that I know a lot of people of color do not have is the financial support of their parents to pay for extremely expensive higher education. And the reason I say that is I've pretty much been on scholarship my whole life. Like, everyone's like, you know what, we're gonna give this kid $10, he might do things. And there was a day, I remember it fondly, I remember it notably, when I was in a college course and I had been working too hard and I fell asleep in class, right? Slept through the entire class, just totally missed it, drooled on my notebook. I know it's being recorded. That happened, that really happened. Rough day, it was a rough day. And after the class, I was like, how much did that nap just cost? Like, how much was it? And I did the math, and based on my tuition, it was like a $150 nap, right? Because you have student loans and all this other stuff. It was $150, and I was like, how is that even possible? That's so expensive. That's like if you were going to rent a hotel in the nice part of Marlboro, right? Just $150, just gone. And it was then that I kind of started to understand for myself that in addition to just wanting to be a person in STEM, having some more knowledge, and this is where really math would come in handy, about like what it means to have money and how much things actually cost can be very valuable. It's basically an algebra equation, you know, y equals mx plus b. And what you'll discover is like, in order to be able to support yourself, your money will go up when you work and it will go down as you live. And so that little equation that's like, well, how much do I need to work to live, right, will determine some of the things that you want to do. And so when I talk about non-traditional pathways, for me, it's an equation of like, can I afford to go to school for $100,000 a year at like the University of China, we'll say, made that up, right? Or does it make sense for me to work and go to a community college because I need some extra help after high school, and then try to get a community college scholarship because they exist? Because that would still be just cheaper than trying to pay for 2 years of school that I might not be competitive at. That's the sort of trade-offs that we make both as engineers, as we're trying to decide how to even make stuff, but frequently also in our personal lives as we try to make the right choices for our own growth and development. Because like you can read about it in the Boston Globe, the current net worth on average for a family of 4 of color is, and every time I say this, it's unbelievable, the net worth for a family of 4 in Boston of color is like $8. So if you take everything they owned and then removed all the money that they owed, so things like a mortgage, car loans, things of that nature, the total sum of that together would be like $8. And part of the reason why I actually strongly enjoyed being on these sorts of calls is I don't think that's an acceptable metric, an acceptable statistic, and an acceptable fact. And engineering and STEM offer a pathway to having a net worth, you know, with your family, your loved ones, that is higher than that $8. I won't say how high it is or how high it'll go, but I think in my heart of hearts that it would be a better way of life.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for your honesty, your time, and your effort that you've put in here this morning. I truly have enjoyed it and have learned a lot, and appreciate each and every one of you for what you've done today. And I'm sure all of our students do as well. And we thank you all very much for attending.